Well, hi, friends. I'm live. Hi. It's me, the girl you don't know yet. And my name is Suze, and I'm the holistic stylist. So, believe it or not, this is supposed to be my main channel. So, the first thing I'd like to say is Google Plus is a pain in my butt. It's worse than the phone book. Now, I ran the Hair Emporium for 30 years, from 1985 to 2015. And I never paid for advertising in the phone book because my business was word of mouth. That's how people used to do it old school back in the day. And of course, now everything is algorithms and, electronic push media. And I'm just not in. So, in the meantime, while I've been on YouTube and social media for the last 4 years, I always miss this channel. So we'll see how Google likes that, won't we? They're always calling me, telling me my stuff's not up to date. I said, you don't get it. There's a long story involved here, and I need some help. So on this channel, what my purpose is, and I'd like to grow the channel focused on this, is working on the mind, body, spirit approach and helping people to design their own lifestyle regime. So, for example, you may say, well, hairdressers just simply do hair. Not so much. In my world, I like to use natural products that first do no harm. So, if you're familiar with this channel, then you've heard me talk about homeopathic tissue salts, which are these. You've also heard me talk about Bach flower essence. And so we're going to explore different ways that we can use these products. And to start out with, I've got a cup of water in front of me. Now, the cell food is great because let me just read it for you. It is the world's #1 oxygen and nutrient supplement since 1969. It is yeast and gluten-free. It's by New Science Corporation, and this bottle makes 22 quarts of enhanced water. It's very important, especially these days with our little toxic earth, right? And so as a hairdresser, we were always the experts when it came to hair, skin, and nails. And of course, these are your major protein sources, let's say. And of course, now with our water, with the problems that it's in, the state of affairs, well, everybody's hair's seeming to fall out. It sucks. I mean, what's a hairdresser going to do if everybody's bald? Now, in the meantime, I am a nationally accredited, board-certified hair colorist that uses advanced replacements for peroxide and ammonia hair color. I use enzyme developers and non-toxic ammonia-free color pigments. Okay. Another thing we're going to discuss here on this channel would be, people always get upset with this, is right-minded thinking. And people say, well, why would a hairdresser know about that? Well, because surely we know our clients so well if we really do serve the public, which I made a career out of. So I have every right to speak out on mental illness and also ways to promote a healthy mind. And, people say, well, what do you mean mental illness, Suze? I'll give it to you short and sweet. Anybody that traffics, harvests, or prostitutes, anything at all, they're mentally ill. Now, what would be right livelihood mindset? Well, that's working with the life charting, which I've made a lot of videos about. And it would also be me sharing stories about how I stood strong enough to actually explore who I am and what I do. Now, you get to the end of that journey and you find out it's all a crock of shit. It's kind of like in the hair shops. There was always trouble going on behind the scenes. And at one time, hair salons and barbershops were so important. That's where the community came to speak. That's why they called them speakeasies. I mean, salons, not just underground, bars during the Prohibition. We were always able to get the word out. The other thing we did was support family and hair salons, just like the old pubs. You could bring your kid there and know they're safe. That was a huge thing about the hair emporium. So over 30 years, you realize that I made friendships that started out with clients that were teenagers. I watched them grow up, get married, have their babies, watch their babies grow up, and speak to them about any particular thing that my cosmetology license covers. Now, let's go over why I've gotten in trouble so far, and that might give you a little bit of insight into my background. Okay, I want to start out right here with this pile of 2 books. And the first one is Managing Stress. Now, like we know, 80% of all dis-ease starts with stress. And as a holistic stylist, I've spoken about that for many years. I started doing wellness seminars in 2005 in the salon. And surely that's what I'd like to do here online, but that's a whole other story that we're just going to skip for now. Another very important book would be Cosmetology Jurisprudence. And one of my nemesis, a drunken, foolish lawyer, speaks about jurisprudence. So what jurisprudence is it is every court case that was documented from 1880 to 1930 associated with the cosmetology industry. So here's what a license gets you. It gets you the ability to be sued if you are not versed on the toxicity of the chemical in question. Well, hiya. I know this just BBB. How you doing? This is my first live stream on this channel. Can you believe it? I'm trying to learn something new every day. And of course, I've always lived by that. So the idea always is if I went out and did a wellness seminar or taught hair or whatever, and one person sincerely learned something, then I'm doing my job. And slowly, one by one, that's what I've been doing as I keep running my head into the proverbial wall. So, unfortunately, hair salons are pretty much a relic of the past. I mean, you've got great clips, you've got supercuts, you've got sports clips. It's all the same MO. It's all corporate run. And these days, believe it or not, like here in St. Louis, they would actually want a hairdresser to speak out on STDs, which is comical because in this book right here and in our, official books, we're not intelligent enough to diagnose a skin condition. We're immediately to send them to a dermatologist. Well, if we're talking about STDs, the symptoms of those and the symptoms of our skin being decimated by the toxic environment that's been shoved on us in the sake of beauty, well, we've got some issues here that we have to deal with. So that's why I first did no harm. Never used chemicals that were toxic. Is she? Your mom is a hairstylist, huh? And she always had a story, tag it, it's true. And, a lot of people think that the stories in the salon are gossip and bullshit, and they're not. They're reflections of our life if we're actually standing in that place of right livelihood and first doing no harm and treating our neighbor as we would want to be treated. So this book is fascinating because even though the words have been written in stone, they don't hold to this day. And that's because we don't have law, and it is a lawless place. So part of my job as your holistic stylist is to teach you self-care, first aid healing methods that are safe, simple, and effective. Bottom line, I'm not the kind of hairdresser. Okay, so let me get a book. We're going to be working with my industry standards. Okay, so for BBB and other people that do know my background, I was always getting in trouble, like even in hairdressing. When I spoke out about non-toxic products, I was threatened. I mean, the hair industry, let's rephrase that, the beauty industry. So that's anything that you would put on your skin as a preparation, or any cosmetic that you would put on your hair or your skin topically. Because don't get me wrong, I mean, there's fools that are still using secret deodorant. And in my other life, where I catch bad guys online, these boofs are talking about natural deodorant that they're making out of baking soda and burning their armpits. What's wrong with a natural Crystal Rock deodorant from the health food store? I mean, we really have been snowed. And of course, my industry started out with Helena Rubinstein and the other gal, and one was for the poor people and one was for the rich. 8 cents was what it cost for the bottle, the label, the packaging, and what was in the bottle, and they were charging $8. This is what began this industry. So when I refer to homeopathy, I mean, right now, in these overinflated days, 500 tablets are $8.95, and it's really easy to take. You never touch them because they don't have a coating. So if your hands are dirty or you have oils on your hands, it can depotentize the actual tissue salt. So it's real simple. You put them in the lid, and they go under your tongue, and they melt. And they taste like candy cigarettes. What they are is the element table. So for example, iron phosphate would be the biochemic first aid. It is for first aid. It's an oxygen provider and an inflammation reducer. So as we go into these days ahead, where people that were purposely addicted to meds that they lied about, I mean, you know, the effectiveness of them, although pretty much side effect is death, right? These medicaments replaced the standard for health and wellness back in 1929, which is convenient. It was right around the stock market crash. Well, these days, when people are into fake hair, extensions, flat irons, absolute nonsense, and crazy hair color. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm just more of a natural kind of girl. And so in my industry, that was not allowed. Now, on this page, we have normal looking people, which always gives you hope. I would even say it's actual real hair. Now, when you get me over into something like this, here again, I mean, live and let live. But when the fashion becomes so ridiculous, you have to realize that every year the big players in fashion and makeup and hairstyles get together and they say, how are we going to make money this year? So they do the reverse opposite of what they did the year before. And of course, that way, here again, More money to be made. And these days, okay, and here again, no judgments. But when we look at images like this, you guys realize that that's my industry's way of promoting the transgender agenda. You don't know if it's a boy in a dress or a girl with fake hair. And I really don't think that there is anything more deceptive, I would say, than doing that to a person. And of course, as Sophia's Emporium and all the things I get myself into, this would be the thing that I call the 31 flavors of strange. No judgment, but this promotes an agenda, and that pisses me off. Yep, just a bunch of crap. And, you know, when I was running my little world of the salon, we stood out because we weren't doing a bunch of fake stuff. We were simply covering gray hair, doing highlights and lowlights, servicing people in their day-to-day walk, because it all depends on your socioeconomic. So in St. Louis, Missouri, especially in the ghetto, you won't be seeing this. You wouldn't even be seeing it in St. Louis City or Clayton. So when you look at a magazine like this, it's totally geared towards the East or the West Coast. Something else that's on my nerves is this particular image right here. I've learned a whole lot on my journey with the #1 international man of mystery, who's also a hairdresser in his little stage act, let's say. And this head has been photoshopped on this body. Where is her neck? And a lot of people these days are noticing the no neck phenomenon. So let's think about this. You have to protect yourself out there in the world, but you don't have a neck. Well, you can't do this. You have no peripheral vision, and the whole body has to shift to see what's behind you or to the side of you. No neck syndrome should not be on a young, slender woman that's on the front cover of a magazine. A lot of the time, this is done to see how far they can push it. For example, I spoke on my other channel about how the last time, well, when Trump was on TV with Pelosi and Schumer, I'm sorry, those weren't real images. And so the beauty industry is all about illusion, theoretically. And that was something that I never agreed with. I really focus more on the inside of the person. And for anybody that's following the esoteric information or the hidden wisdom, well, now our insides are shown from our outside, and there's no secrets, son of a gun. So it's really about embracing your natural beauty. And like Rudolf Steiner said, even if someone finds the truth distasteful or even ugly, you must call it beautiful because it's true. Now, I think it's a lot more ugly. They have a bunch of fake fucks running around acting like they're real humans, and their avatar gives them the illusion of like a sex kitten. But then when you really see them, I mean, they're fuddly. So here again, makeup is not supposed to hide the truth. It's supposed to enhance your positive features. See, like right here, boy or girl. There's a lot of pictures where we see people like, say, Serena Williams, where one minute she has an appendage and the next minute she doesn't. And I think that that's very difficult in today's world, when one of the things we will be discussing on this channel is sexuality, birth control, and a lot of the hidden knowledge that goes along with this war and the battle of the sexes. And I have a lot of very strong, masculine, male kind of friends. A lot of people think that's because I'm a hose bag. No. I mean, especially when you run a salon, I promise you, you can have friendships with men, trust me. And that's just like any of the men I decide to befriend online. It is an honest attempt to communicate with another human being. So people have spun out of control on this journey. That bothers me too. Okay. I did bring these books because as we go along on this journey, I will refer to the books. When we talk about the Bach flower essence, this is incredible. It's easy enough to take an essence and put it in your water, just like I did the self food. So I can do this right into my water. I can also do this under my tongue, like this. I can put it on my pulse points, like this. In this book, right here, check it out. Every area of the human body. Oh, I didn't mean to show you that. See, that's why we're going to have to talk about sexuality. But each area of the body has a designated zone. So if you know where your pain comes from, or where your skin problem is, or whatever it is, you simply go into this book right here, find the area, mix the essence with water, apply a compress, and sit back and chill out. I think one of the best ways to use Bach flower essence is when we first get into healing. The Star of Bethlehem is for shock, grief, and fright. It's also for original traumatic scars. The first scar that we have, we get into each of the essence right here. And look at how many sections on the head. But anyhow, the first scar that we get is actually our belly button, and it's where we're cut off from our life source. So when I work with people that are having a stressed out, fucked up life, which is pretty much 95% of all of us, right? I would take my Bach water and soak it with a cotton ball and tell the client to shove that in their belly button. I mean, I'm not stepping all in their business, you know. This is really here again about self-care. So you don't need me from the start, you know, poking you and all those things. If you can do it yourself, I'm there for support. So then the other thing you do with your Star of Bethlehem water is you take a cotton pledgelet and you put it on your heart, because we've all dealt with heartbreak. And that's one of the biggest things I see online. People are so angry because they feel like they must have been stupid to have bought every lie that they've been given. And that's where I have to take you back to the FDA, who says, we're sorry. We didn't want to deprive you of your enjoyment. So in the meantime, while you're hating your wife, well, see, back in the day, women wore face powder with arsenic. So the guy comes home, kisses his chick, starts to feel shitty, and the next thing you know, nobody's having sex. So that's kind of how that would relate, as odd as it sounds. This is a book that is beyond Bach flower essence, because I live here in America. Well, I live in the middle of the Northern American continent, because really, you can't have a wall between us and what lies below, you know, the South in Mexico or Venezuela. And oh yeah, big action on Venezuela tonight. I will talk about that in a minute. But around the world, wherever you live, wherever you call home, there are flowers that will heal you emotionally as well as physically. So let's say you lived in the Sound of Music soundtrack. You could go out and pick the flowers in the valley, and you would put them into spring water and expose them to sunlight for 24 hours. You would add alcohol to preserve. So the Bach flower essence are preserved with brandy. When we get into the Bach for pets, they actually use a glycerin solution instead of the brandy. So there's many ways to preserve. A lot of the natural products that I would endorse would be stabilized to give you a shelf life of 4 years, and it would be vitamins A, C, and E. Whereas pretty much the beauty industry products, which are professional and of course better than everybody else's, they have a lot of parabens in them. They give it a 14-year shelf life. And they have big sales and do supply and demand and trade wars and every other stupid thing. So, in my view of what is coming for us as we go through these transitions, and every false institution crumbles to the ground, we really need to know how to take care of ourselves on a variety of levels. I mean, it's not really the kind of hair shop anybody would expect, but the Hair Emporium never was. Now, this book has got a lot of information in it, and it's Where There Is No Doctor, a Village Healthcare Handbook. A lot of good information. One of the places that I learned about all the hard things of life beyond what my cosmetology book taught was this book, Dr. Hollick's Complete Works. And we will refer to this extensively on this channel. On the front page, we have diseases of the male and female generative organs, the Matron's Manual of Midwifery and Childbirth, the Marriage Guide, the diseases of women, familiarly explained, new, revised, and enlarged edition, complete in one volume, plain and practical for popular use. Now, believe it or not, before the turn of the 20th century, until right about when the homeopathy was made illegal in the hospitals, do you know women couldn't learn about natural forms of birth control? It was illegal. They had to hide it in the back of sociology books. And I didn't bring that one down tonight because my arms were full. And that needs a whole show on its own. I have done a YouTube or two in the past referring to that book. Because when we start teaching natural birth control, people are going to need to know what their cycle is again. So many people don't know that because of through eugenics, whether it's the sperm count being lowered or the woman being put on a birth control device that totally toasts her insides. People are going to need to know, and people are going to need to know how to regenerate their systems. I never heard of the no neck thing. Okay, so a lot of people notice that us Americans tend to have more bulbulous shapes than people in struggling countries, let's say, because their asses got to run. They got to run from whatever's coming or what, you know. I mean, we've been eating out of microwaves and GMO bullshit for so long. What? You want to go out? We're also going to talk about animals on this channel. Excuse me a minute. And you know what, BBB? If I knew how to work this screen, man, I'd be playing music and have all sorts of entertainment for you. But this is my first live stream doing it this way. So I'm really going to have to kind of check it out before I go to the next level. But the no neck syndrome sucks. So what happens is you go, where the fuck did their neck go? And it's kind of like in their shoulders like this. I think a lot of that is due to arthritic conditions which are forced on people through their regimes and lifestyles. And of course, I'm very anti-microwave as far as using one to eat or boil water or even heat up anything. We never turn ours on. We put cat food cans in it. Okay, so the natural forms of birth control. Well, now, here's what we're talking about. You know, everything's bullshit with politics and religion. So, back in the day, of course, the only reason to have, sex with somebody was to reproduce. And they needed to keep the women calm because when the women's emotions were up and down, they could release extra eggs. So, you know the old story. You go to a high school reunion, you go to the bar and meet your old college buddies, you go to a funeral or a wedding, you meet up with somebody and poof, they're pregnant. That's because they were releasing eggs, not during their ovulation. Usually, there's just a very short, small window where you can conceive. And people don't know that. So, if someone had a regular cycle, which they've manipulated and stolen from our women, but if you had one, and mine was like a clock, regular, always, depending on the variable, which means I guarantee that I'm on a 30-day cycle. Oh shit. But there was that one time that it was 28 days. That would create a flow chart. And it goes smack dab up in the face of the Vatican and those rulers of our planet and says, to them, because now a woman and a man are free to make love and not worry about if they're going to get knocked up. See, that twists the whole thing around because remember, sex is dirty. And this is in the days where it's okay to do the 31 flavors of strange. But when we're just talking about normal stuff, that's not allowed, or it's passe, or it's irrelevant. And I say bullshit. So that's my story on that. I appreciate it. I'm glad that there are people out there that enjoy what I'm saying. Now, I hope you don't have a weak stomach, BBB. Just look away if you do. Just kidding. You're going to be fine. All right. So, back to me and the trouble that precedes me everywhere I go. In real life, I have done colon cleanse, extensive, 3 months. I passed liver flukes years ago. Liver flukes are carcinogenic if you keep them in your body too long. Okay, good. Now, let's go to a manly man example. John Wayne. When he passes, they say he was full of cancer. And they say the reason why, of course, is because he smoked. But when they did the autopsy, what about that 9-foot tapeworm living in him? And see, these worms and parasites are carcinogenic and deadly. Now, of course, over on the Sophia's Emporium side, we have discussed parasites, and we have also expanded that out to say, hey, there's not just physical ones. There's energetic parasites. There are vampires that will loosh energy. And, we get into all the creepy stuff. We also have to consider that we are electrical beings and that depending on how you roll with the computer and who you engage with online, that you might have a dirty stream, and they call it space herpes, which I think is kind of ate up like a soup sandwich, but That's just terms and definitions, right? These energetic parasites aren't much different than the ones in this book called Practical Bacteriology, Blood Work, and Parasitology. These medical books that I have came off of a physician's personal library who was retired. And, you know, it was a friend. And they said, Suze, do you want any of these books? And I said, you know I do. And I ran over there and grabbed them. I have an extensive library that I look forward to sharing with anyone who has any questions. So the thing that gets me about all this politics horse shit would be the idea that once you're past whatever age you'll fall for, that you need a colonoscopy. I highly advise against it. But anyhow, when they do that to a person, simply, they give them, whether it's a barium enema or whatever they give them, to flush all the shit out of their intestine theoretically. No. They're saying the rectum. Well, I'm talking about miles of intestines because I know they're not shoving that tube that far up there. So see, we already have definitions being inverted, which is spell casting, which is power and control, and we're done with it, the human race. So, for example, back in the old days, the poor kids were tortured. They had to get up in the morning and go outside when the sun was coming up because pinworms play rock band and dance all night around the anus. So they would see them moving, and then somebody would give that child castor oil. And of course, nobody wanted to take the castor oil. I don't blame them a bit. But I'm going to take this a little farther. So the original use, this is what they told us of castor oil, was only to be imbibed to flush out worms and parasites. But that was never true. Because if anybody read Edgar Casey's work, well, all of the people that he saw and helped, 98% of them didn't need to imbibe castor oil. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. They would do castor oil packs topically on the skin, and those do work. I have made videos about it, and I have spoken about it extensively. And when people are on their deathbeds, I mean, literally, then they'll say, well, you know, I'll try that castor oil pack. It's like, what the fuck's wrong with you, man? It's the Palm of Christ oil. It is a healing oil. It is soothing to the soul, and it will create a healing response in one's body. That's the way to pass a kidney stone. Castor oil treatments. So, back to the worms. Of course, now, on this channel, I will not, and I never have, been interested in working with essential oils or herbs because there's some you can take and live, and there's some you can take and you could die. And so here again, back to the first do no harm. I have nothing to say negative about it. It's just not what my focus is. I have a very close friend that was told to terminate the life that was growing in her womb. And they went through a process, a home, you know, I could do it yourself, of wormwood and black walnut and different things that have always been known amongst herbologists or witches or whatever, you know, and it could spontaneously abort a life. But that doesn't mean it will. So this human soul growing inside of another human didn't want to be flushed. And the baby was born. and the organs were not in the proper places. One tube didn't connect to another tube. Fortunately, their father was a veteran. So these girls got to go to the VA and have their medical experiments done there. The child was born where the choice was made whether to be one sex or the other. These days, with all this trafficking and harvesting and prostituting, and the disgusting pictures that I've found when I play Susie Cop online and bust bad guys because they piss me off too. It's so difficult to see these pictures of what you think is a guy, and he's got this long of a thing that should be a penis, but it could be a girl with a big clit. I don't know. This is why we must be able to discuss sex, because, like I asked the other day when I was getting myself in trouble, let's say a guy wants to be a girl, and you say, cool, man, whatever do you think? And so the surgery involves cutting the penis and flipping it inside out to make the vagina, right? Well, what if dude's boyfriend is like too well endowed and bust that? Now we're back to sodomy and we're back to parasites and worms. I don't get why any real man could say that he would prefer to do that in that orifice, full well knowing he's going into a worm den, and then come out and want to stick it in another place. See, this is fucked up. And so here again, as a holistic stylist, I will talk about these things, and I do have a license, and there's a lot of smart asses that have been basically trying to kill me and bury me so deep I can't get up. They say I ought to stick to what I'm licensed in. All right. I think I'll just have to get a little deeper into it. And space herpes. I don't know if you've heard about the stupid Corey Good, David Wilcock story from hell. And behind the scenes, of course, I know what's going on there and connect into it. And it's this whole huge global network of hackers and jackasses and sales and marketing demons that connect the conscious consumer network with MSN broadcasting. Isn't that something? So now we're into the media. And here again, as a holistic stylist, I know media. And when I gossip, it's gospel. So back to these worms and parasites. And I know I haven't opened the book yet. Let's get up here. I'll find you a few pictures and get some good ones. I think this is fascinating, of course, right now, too, because they tell us we're so clean and evolved, and they think that magically we don't have worms and parasites anymore. I think that's a large part of the agenda and how people get ill. Wow. Tuberculous glycerin. It's several months old, and it's living in this tube. See it right there to the left? That's pretty gross. Now back to John Wayne. Can you imagine having a 9-foot tapeworm? And you're a big, strong man. He's an A blood type, which means he really shouldn't be eating meat. He cannot digest it. He didn't have enough stomach acid to do so. Well, when they autopsied him and found that worm, see, back in the old days, all sorts of different shapes and frequencies, I would even say. But back in those days, of course, the whole thing had been whitewashed for 2 generations. They say we're the last generation to carry these memories of what really happened, and that's why it's so important that we speak out and bring these books and this information. The generation that my son is in, I mean, they don't even date anymore. And then you wonder, well, how can they reproduce? And then we get into the tunnel with Good and Wilcock and Blue Avians and Grays and all sorts of stuff. And of course, the reason they needed to mess with us is because they had lost the ability to love and the ability to reproduce. Table of important animal parasite diseases. Yeah, this is a pretty good one here. So, here again, you can get worms and parasites even if you're a vegetarian because they will be on the vegetables and the fruits. But one of the best examples that I have to bring is pork. I mean, you can cook that shit till it's burnt and those worms are still alive. Now, if you're going to eat that stuff, just do colon cleanses and take care of yourself. What is the percentage of the world population with parasites? Even though when I did that cleanse, a 3-month cleanse where I passed liver flukes, they would say that you've done that a lifetime cleanse. But it's good to do a monthly cleanse quarterly. And then you think, well, shit, that only gives me 2 months off and 1 month on. So in answer to your question, I'm afraid that it is 100%. I don't think that there's anyone exempt. We're going to have to get into my files and get the paperwork for the company that I thought was the #1 top-notch cleanse manufacturer. And it was called, of all things, Physicians. It was a physician's cleanse, like doctor approved. And you're like, how's that? Because most of the time they're hiding it. But, you can go to any health food store and get a parasite cleanse or a liver cleanse or a lung cleanse. I mean, they have them for every major organ. It's really cool. But of course, when you're doing a parasite cleanse, that is the only time that you should expect to have bowel movements of 4 or 5 a day. It's not a lot of fun. I will tell you that. It hurts. Usually people will pass black sludge, and if they try to say that was black goo, I'm going to fuck somebody up, right? But in the meantime, I just heard recently that what black goo really is it's interior bleeding. There's certain things that are happening with our fellow man these days where their organs are liquefying and breaking down, and there's all sorts of strange things. Not all the worms are carcinogenic, so I don't want anybody to go into a panic. It's kind of like what happened with me when I started taking care of myself in my 30s. And by the time I was in my 40s, I had begun the process of adapting my lifestyle and living for my blood type. So when you just look at what you put in your mouth, I'm talking about food and drink, 6 out of 10 weren't beneficial for me. Half of them were poison. The other half were just neutral, which means they just fill you up. So that was when I quit eating cheeseburgers, which was my favorite food. And it was also when I quit drinking alcohol. And here's another great picture. The worst thing about doing one of these cleanses is that it's kind of addictive. You start feeling good. So like with a colon cleanse, they say, and it's true. Anybody that I've seen do one, it's true. Anywhere from 40 or from 4 to 20 pounds of undigested food, impacted fecal matter, and intestinal lining. Talk about an easy way to diet, right? Now we're back to the women of Hollywood, the golden days where they had 20-inch waists. Back then, a beauty tip was to actually ingest a specific type of worm and only let it feed for so long and expunge it, which means get it the hell out. I'm going to show you something, then I'm going to tell a story. Most people believe that the only place you have worms or parasites is in your intestines or in your rectum, but it's not true. These son of a bitches lodge in muscle tissue. So you can see that place. And it's very creepy. Now, do you think that these worms and parasites that lodge in muscles and in between joints might be a reason why people have arthritis? It's not because you're old at 25. Are you kidding me? It's because a combination of calcified pineal glands and a looshing of the cerebral spinal fluid, which is very important for your spirituality. I have seen the black goo on YouTube coming out of the earth almost like it's supposed to be an alien sentient being. Yes. So, here again, we realize that there are a lot of invisible forces that manifest visibly in ways that experts don't have the balls to talk about because they're under a non-disclosure agreement. It's a really good way to look at all of these things. You don't want to create a panic. People will freak out, won't they? Well, in the meantime, people are freaking out. So, the whole thing with the black goo, if Mother Earth is as live as you and I are, and the animals are as sacred as the earth and we are, and they're shitting on all of us, why wouldn't there be energetic parasites that would resemble black goo? A big thing that's going on right now, while people run terrified, is that most of the laboratories are compromised. They're co-opted. Dr. Shealy, who is local here in Missouri, and he's the author of Holy Water, Sacred Oil, and the Methuselah Complex, How to Live to Be at Least 120. It's not that tough. But anyhow, he knew a lot of the background with what's going on because the man's in his 80s. I mean, he's been around since the day. And he only trusts 2 laboratories in all of Northern America. Like this place we live in that they want to build the wall and you can't go over to Canada. You know, the place in the middle. I say this is all of the Americas, like they used to call it in the day. But maybe they'll have to make up a new name. I did want to bring up Venezuela real quick. I know BBB that, we've, had exchange between us. So I need you to know that this Venezuela thing that's going on. Now I'm going to connect it to Sandro, aka Roberto Sanchez, family of said Elvis Presley, who's not the 350-pound one with parasites that's ripping people off. Has nothing to do with none of that. Roberto Sanchez is the guy that people will honor as this shakes out, because here we have this fucked up cabal putting in a dude in Venezuela that nobody likes, and they were just getting on their feet. And you know what they were doing? They were back in the streets having farmers markets and bartering to stay alive. And then that jackass sets up. So, in the meantime, through my Elvis Presley mysteries and what they've shown me, this Roberto Sanchez gave contracts to actors and doppelgangers and family to represent him musically or in film or theater or in public appearances. And he was back at the casa in his silk robe, being the maestro behind the scenes, being very involved in taking care of the peoples of South America. When I say South America, I'm talking about all of it. Mexico down to Venezuela, wherever that, it's a big area, and everybody knew him. Well, they acted like he died in 2010. That was his doppelganger. It's just like the dopey Elvis stories. So you see, this 10-year facial recognition project, like Reese Witherspoon is doing, and all these people you see on TV that aren't human anymore, their biometrics have been purchased. Their voice algorithm systems have been purchased. And they're going to make the ideal people that aren't real people. And they work for free. So it's big shit. But anyhow, there have been planes leave Venezuela of important people that are going to come take care of some business. There is also war coming at them, incoming. The article was in Russian. And people are afraid it's going to turn bad real fast. And all I can say to you guys is that if you've heard anything I've said over these last couple years, who else better than some dedicated artists and musicians that are strong and virile and have lived their lives? They weren't co-opted butt buddies. They got out and had doppelgangers imitating them and playing their roles. Good Lord. They all play rock band, and they're all back. And who else but somebody like Elvis with all the electronics and the 73 satellite concert tour? I'm telling you what, they've had a plan in place. They've stolen our history. I don't mean the rock guys. This fucked up system of the Antichrist has not only stolen our time and offended our spirits, oh no. They've stolen our scripts and twisted history. And so they're writing a bunch of crap that wants to erase us. And I'm telling you what, they're not going to have it. And I'm involved on deep levels, telepathically, psychically, heart, brain, the whole 9 yards. So I was a natural fit, I see, for the job because it was easy to validate that I actually do care about people. And then with everything that's happened on the supernatural side of this journey, I allowed them to see the real me and I went willingly into wherever we're heading. And I know that all of the native indigenous tribes have come together here in America. They're going to divide into two groups, the ones that aren't prejudiced and the ones that say you have to be one of them. And they were affected by the programs too, and talk about a group of people that have chronic parasites and worms. And this was done on purpose, just like the chicken pox, the blankets with the chicken pox or smallpox. Smallpox. It's very easy to hit people with parasites and worms in contaminated water. That's how they do it. All right. So the worms, actresses in the 20s, ingested it like a leech or an algae type of life form or a maggot that eats the dead cells. Yeah, that's a nice visual. And then take it to modern day where you're going to go in and have a procedure done and they're going to suck fat out of you. Well, I would reckon it to something like what you refer to in that analogy, which is broad spectrum accurate. Yes. Yes. Good. Oh, wait, you're not up to speed with Venezuela. Okay, this shit just hit the fan in the last 3 hours. So it's not that you're behind. I'm interested in it because I know what's going on behind the scenes. So when I know the truth that Sandro in 2014, I'm talking about Roberto Sanchez, walks into the record bureau and says, "Hey, I'm alive." And the gal says, "It can't be you. You're dead. You're in this book here." And of course, they're on paper and pencil, like a guest registry. And so what happened was the man who passed, who was the Sandro of America, performing in Vegas in the 80s. The white people didn't know because it's like I have to tell people they don't remember. There were some white people as prejudiced of Spanish people as they were black. So after Elvis, croaks on a cheeseburger in 1977, weighing 350 pounds with parasites. You get it? That wasn't Elvis. That was the doppelganger. It is a holographic representation of what Roberto Sanchez went through. So here again, he's in the record bureau in 2014. The bitch is telling him he's not alive. And I mean, this guy's beautiful. And he's powerful. And he's a statesman. And he's a producer. And he's the maestro. And he says, "My dear woman, be reasonable. Can't you see?" And of course, she was tripping. She was probably peeing in her pants, But anyhow, the reason I know about this is because Sandro said he admires my passion in seeking the truth. And he says I'm family. So when we talk about these international men of mystery, I'm their kin somehow. And I'm going to find out. I'm also going to be involved with the group and be the cheerleader. Dadgummit. I was a cheerleader in high school. It's not that far-fetched. All right. So you retracted a message. And then you say, "So how would you get clear of energetic parasites?" Excellent question. If I were working with someone I would never allow a one-size-fits-all need. Besides the castor oil packs, because remember, it's going to take care of physical and energetic and metaphysical. All of the boogie all in one. The castor oil is going to be number one key, critical, primary. The other thing is burning out the dross. So what I would do to burn out the dross would be to put somebody on a biomat, and I have 3 of them here in my home. So in the salon, of course, when I was helping people, they would be on the biomat at 150 degrees. You would want to think of it like wearing organic cotton and sweating them out. And most people can't take a biomat on 150 for any more than about 45 minutes. But when you're dealing with people that are really in trauma, even the lowest biomat setting will activate that castor oil. So we had a friend that was a heroin addict, and his urine had already turned brown, and the POs had said, "You're fucked, man. You're going to die." And, we said, "Get your ass over here. Let us do this on you." Now, of course, he's got a million problems, and sitting still is probably the biggest one. Too bad you can't knock somebody out or fucking tie him up, and make him just rest. I mean, he wanted to talk shit and every other thing. It's like, dude, just shut up, man. Listen to some music, chill out, and let the castor oil do its job. And after 2 hours, because we held him to the 2 hours, 45 minutes is the minimum time. 2 hours is a decent treatment. So he went to go to the bathroom, and he came downstairs, and he was like crying, happy, saying his pee was yellow. Well, yeah, that's what the Palma Christi oil would do for somebody. So first things first, I'm going to say castor oil, biomat. I don't say to get involved with the herbs or the snake oil. I am into crystals, and there are certain crystals that will help draw them out if you believe that. And like we know, placebo is 30%. And what that means is when they told you we only use 4 to 10% of our brains, they were lying. Absolutely lying. If you read it, if you put it into practical use, and you work at your own self so you have the experience, your retention rate goes up to 90% instead of 10% if you just read it. There's charts on that stuff. So when it comes to these worms and parasites, I've pulled things out of myself that I've done videos on too, that wind up, when it's all said and done, being some crazy fucked up kind of space metal. I have it upstairs. I mean, I went through the whole thing, made a video. It was really disgusting, and it was completely under my skin. One day out in the garden cleaning shit up, and I get attacked. Now, some people look at that as the mini drones. Some of it look at as biowarfare. I just know I don't like it in me. And I'm always the kind of bitch that says, get it out. So I'm an expert with sharp objects like my scissors and tweezers and incredible little gadgets and gadgets. And I suck that son of a bitch out, and filmed the whole thing. Um, of course, I've been mocked extensively for removing what I said was an implant out of my chest when we moved here to Ferguson. Dr. Dick Versendahl, the deceased homeopath that was mysteriously run into a snow mound in his hometown and died, he said I had Lyme disease. I said, dude, you're telling me a tick walked across my boob, and it was a girl tick and she was pregnant, and when she bit me, she shoved her kid into me. I mean, for real? And he's like, no. And I was like, right. So you say potato, I say patata, and whatever these things are, we must be responsible for removing them and staying alive, because there's no damn doctor that's going to help. Back in the day of all this, when they were showing everybody, this is some ugly shit, they actually had like a little Bo Peep hook, and it was long, it was metal, and when the worm came out, like let's pretend it's John Wayne with a 9-foot worm, it's either going to come out the rectum or it's going to come out the esophagus. Now, if they come out the esophagus, most people died because they were asphyxiated. They couldn't breathe. But if you're lucky enough for it to rip you a new asshole, what would happen was it'd be like a snake. And then the snake charmer, which would be the homeopathic physician with some courage, would encourage that demonic life form to curl itself around the hook. That would be called biohazard. Then you would take your biohazard on a stick and take it outside, and they would put it in a campfire and burn that son of a bitch. That's how they did it. Back to the question, though, of, oh, you ain't kidding. I've been watching. And, of course, you realize that even people like Jonas Salk, I mean, some people think he's a jackass. Some know he's not. What happened was he was blacklisted because he would not leave the subject alone of working on viruses. And they said, you're an idiot. You can't do nothing about a virus. You can only work on bacteria. Well, we all know that these mind viruses and these fungus and these things that are all goo related would be the very things that they wanted to kill us with. And Salk knew that if you didn't make the batch properly, that you would create extra infection and pus. He also knew if you combined two together, that it would increase the chances for illness. And he knew that during World War I, when he was given the flu vaccine out. Come to find out, people that we would call black, they have a missing enzyme. And they're really not black people. It's people that were indigenous to the equator. So now we're going to have to say brown. We're going to have to say caramel and every other color in between. Those people lack a certain enzyme. So what they did was kept record of that shit and played boogie boogie with the vaccines, and the whole time Salk's saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And they said, fuck you, Salk. And then Sabine comes along, and of course his is the popular one because people are willing to invest into it. Whereas Salk didn't seek a stinking dime, and they sent him into the ghettos. They sent him into the most dire of situations. And in the end, the Rolling Stone magazine does an article years later about that particular color of ape that they knew had the boogie boogie, and that's how AIDS got started, not a bunch of flamers in San Francisco dancing disco ball. It wasn't like that. So the whole vaccine controversy is something that between the years of 1955 to 1963, the polio batches were tainted, and they had too much pus, which was carcinogenic. But they weren't going to throw it away or write it off as a loss. That was part of the eugenics program, and that's why so many people that were born before I was, because I was born in 64. Fortunately, I missed that by 6 months. But in the meantime, these people that are, a little older than I am, they have a lot of autoimmunes, and they have a lot of cancer, and they have a lot of Parkinson's and that thing Marlo Thomas got. It's like neurological shit. And then you got these people, man, walking around sick, and you know what they've got? They've got mutated polio-type diseases. And I would say that that's where we get into a lot of things about a combination of eugenics and hiding the truth about parasites. Yeah, I mean, there never was anything such as healthcare insurance. That was eugenics. And then those SOBs are going to take away these people's medicine, and at the same time, what's up with that last batch of high blood pressure meds that's tainted? What are they supposed to do? Turn it back in, puke it up, take Ipecac? And it goes on and on. Now, as our system crashes, let's look at it this way. Our veterans, if they want their health care, they must be caught up on all their inoculations. Well, let's say they've been retired for 30 years and they know about the programs. They know about their buddies. They know about the post-traumatic stress disorder. They know about the suicides. And they're like, motherfucker, man, I got to go get these shots to have my insurance? I don't want it. And that's just like me. I don't want their Medicare. I don't want their Medicaid. I don't want their Western medicine. I will live and exist and transcend without it. And that is my damn choice. I don't want any government aid. I don't want fucking WIC. I don't want none of this shit. I don't take Western medicine. And that's my choice. I'm not saying that everyone has that luxury. And I feel really bad for the people that got hooked on the meds. They have people under the belief that if they quit taking the meds, they will die. I don't know how true that ever was. And then they give it the spin and the knife. And they say, we're taking your meds away. So if we're back to the placebo, you can see that the placebo now transmutes into what's called spellcraft and black magic, because they are projecting on you that you will be sick and that you will die and that you are a mess. They're talking about themselves. I don't know. It's an ugly chapter in the never-ending story. Really ugly. Let me see if I can get you any more good pictures. That's really gross. All right. This is good. Here, you have some of this. This is a good page. Law of reflection. Absolutely. And that's why they say the dark mirror. And then you think about all the energy that this mirror has absorbed. And I know in my own case, my stories were too traumatic for people, and they triggered their own memories of things that they had wanted to brush under the rug, which I completely get how that happens. This is a roundworm. Now, this is where we get into teeth. So, like the liver flukes that I passed, they had like a suction cup mouth. It was round like a raisin. It wasn't long like a worm. A fluke is different than a worm. Flukes are generally picked up by kids playing in streams, like lakes and ponds and shit. Still standing water. Transmuted from the snail, the snail's the original host, onto the human. I wasn't playing in the creek, but I had 130 plants in my hair salon, and I had a papyrus plant in water that had what I call sea monkeys, which were brine shrimp. It created an ecosystem. And one of the ways that parasites can breach our security is through our skin, our first organ of defense. So whether I had cut my hands, like a little scissor cut, or whether it's just because we're porous, it doesn't matter. That's how it happened. Now, look at these bitches. They got teeth. So you're either going to have suction cups. I saw the fluke on monsters inside me. Yeah, liver flukes are a bitch, man. And they say that A blood types tend to get them. I don't know if you know your blood type. They say A's are more susceptible to that. O's are more susceptible to worms because O's have more mucus. And when I did my cleanse, I didn't really poop out phlegm balls. I had a friend that was an O blood type, and they looked like those bubbles they put in the bubble tea. You know what I'm talking about? They're chewy. And in bubble tea, they taste like tapioca. I'm sure that shit that came out of her did not taste like tapioca, but I'm just trying to give you a visual, because my friends that did these cleanses, they'd be calling me in the bathroom going, "Suze, look at this." And it's like, man, I know. It's a fucking zoo. It's scary, but it's always better to have it in, to have it out than to have it in. I go back to that all the time. I don't want no needles put in me. I don't want any chips in me. I don't want things under my skin that aren't supposed to be there. I have issues. That's it. I have issues. Ova of the parasitic worm of man. And this is a nematoda, and it's drawn to scale, says the book. A lot of these things are asexual, which means that they can reproduce themselves, just like a worm outside. Let's say somebody was trying to get rid of a worm and they pulled on it or they clipped it. The other part would go back up inside them and reproduce. That's why the hooks were so important. Kind of like when you're taking a tick out, it's so important to get the head. And look at the heads on that. And don't they look like aliens? And why is everybody so fucked up over all of this? I mean, this seems like an alien to me. What the hell do I know? It really bugs me when people, for sport and profit and just to fuck shit up, interject the words, damn. A lot of words that piss me off, they interject. Forget it. I just lost it. Now, here's one underneath the skin. And the picture with multiple pictures, we're looking at guinea worms and all sorts of odd creatures. But let me see if I can see. Okay. All right. So, see this right here? Where you can see it under the skin? All right. Here's what's going to trip people out. I have a skill that I'm able to remote view and see with my flippin' eyes parasites and demons on people's skin. And I know that sounds bad. I've only seen it on the Elvis doppelganger and on the people that ran that restaurant called Sweetie Pies here in Ferguson. They did an Oprah deal on them. That was sick. The kid was born preemie neonatal because the parents were trifling, sticking their shit and everything, right? But when the kid was born, you could see him on the outside of the child. And the mom looked at the baby like, you little ugly thing, because it really didn't look like a baby because it was premature and sick. So I've seen worms and parasites on the grounds of Graceland. And of course, I see them all over C.W. Chanter. So one of the things that I did yesterday, and now I want to tie something in. I have a new friend on YouTube that is just an incredible woman. And her channel is called The Fifth World. Now, she's a hub for everyone that is sending the pictures of the phenomena that's manifesting in the sky. In the meantime, Chanter takes every one of his shows, and without saying my name, he fucks with me. And what I was showing people, and maybe you can see it right here on my nose, I have a patch of dry skin that I can flake off when it's ready. And most people would say that it's a basal cell skin cancer, single cell skin cancer. Other people would say it's Morgellons. And of course, people just like to tease me that I'm going to die, right? The spell cast and back to that. So the Fifth World is now showing people how we're changing from a carbon-based life form to a crystalline DNA upgrade. And she's been taking either a piece of skin of her own or tears from her eyes, and she's putting them under a high-power microscope. And just what I showed you. So I'm going to go back to this. If somebody was in a panic, they would think that this is what they're seeing. But what they're really seeing looks like these black threads that are on the skin and under the skin. That's what they're going to call Morgellons. So these trolls started attacking this woman. And she's been doing a lot of self-healing, and she was very, very sick, acutely. Had a lot of problems. And then these trolls come fucking with her. So when we realize that we're a microcosm of the macrocosm, we would have to be able to accept the reality that we have a whole bunch of invisible friends taking a ride on us. The better you can do with a regime, the less of those deadly friends you have. And then those good bacterias can do what they're supposed to do. But it was like a surprise attack. To make people fearful was always the idea. Okay, so the Roundup and Agent Orange, real quick, just backtracking. All from Monsanto. All Bayer Monsanto. All eugenics. My hometown is where these son of a bitches set up their world headquarters. I don't like them very much. Joe's dad ran secret programs there and actually was one of a team that picked out the location. We're the biotech capital, come to find out, of these here United States. So we're a slow kill medical experiment. Once I let that news out, everybody really started freaking out because when you pay 25.9% interest and you pay taxes that are ridiculous and you live in a nuclear dump, something's wrong. What do we need government for? And I promise you, if we're the pussies that hold back the movement, well, I don't think we're going to be looked up to anymore. And in the meantime, I think we might be able to redeem ourselves here. Maybe. I'm going to say the answer is yes, that will happen. I have that faith. You don't know your blood type. Okay. All you got to do is go to the health food store and they will have test kits there and you have to prick your finger with the lancet and then you put your blood on that. You know, it'd be like, to me, it would be like finding out your pH or whatever drugs, like somebody's drug testing you. But this would give you your blood type. You will not get it from your doctor. Hopefully you don't even have a doctor. But if you did, they wouldn't give it to you because they tell you the insurance won't cover the cost of that test. And that's a crock of shit. I know my blood type because I'm also negative. And the father of my children was positive. And that means that my body wanted to attack that life I was carrying like a foreign invader. Back in the old days, before a man and a woman would be married, they would cut each of them, very honorably, gently, and they would run the blood down a sword. And if those two bloods merged, they could reproduce without it killing the woman. When you have negative blood and you don't know it, the babies are born with those cleft palates or minor birth defects. And then the more babies that you have, you run the risk of the baby being stillborn or the mom dying. But that's why you got to have more than one bitch have your kids, right? I mean, you always need the heir and a spare. So now we're back to a bunch of creepy, fucked up stories. But you should find out your blood type, BBB. And I would just go to a health food store. The kits are like $10, $12. No big deal. Find out. And then from there, what you want is Dr. Diadamo. And that would be, let me write it down for you. It's easier. I'll show you the right way to write it. I believe It looks just like that. If it doesn't look like that, it looks like this. It's either an I or an E. And then of course we have that up thing, and then capital ADAMO. And it would be live right for your blood type. They also have eat right for your blood type, but that book makes you want to punch somebody. The format just gets on your last nerve. And in the meantime, back to your blood type. Think of it like this. Different cars need different weight motor oil to keep their engine functioning at a top velocity. A blood is thick and sticky. O blood is thin and runny. So if you get an O blood type to believe in the doctor, and you get them on some blood pressure meds, or they get sick, or they have clogged arteries, the next thing you know, they're giving them a blood thinner. And in the meantime, that's where you get the disease of hemophilia. Like when people just bleed out, their blood is so watery, I guess. It's really creepy. What else did you say? At least I know what it is, huh? I know what it is. And it's so sad. That's kind of like to know the truth about California and to know that they had premeditated where the fires would bust out because they were going to always build the high-speed light rail there, even though nobody can afford to live there, right? They have the same thing planned for St. Louis next year. So I'm in the ghetto in North County in St. Louis, and I try to explain to people, I mean, fucking open your eyes, man. They're not going to do it in the city of St. Louis. They got the new Lowe's Hotel while they're shutting down the Lowe's hardware stores, right? I mean, you got to have all your professional bullshit sports, and you got to redo the arch and piss on the parade and jump around. But Larry Rice can't help the homeless people. So it won't be in the city of St. Louis. And it sure won't be in South City because that's all a floodplain. There's not enough land mass. South St. Louis is much thinner than North County. North County has all been decimated. It is part of the Pruitt-Iago projects. Where I went to grade school, Riverview Gardens was one of the first 3 places that were forced deseg back in '74, which made the racial wars. And then, of course, I come to you from Ferguson, where a white girl gets blacklisted because of TIF money and dick sucking and passing some phony video footage of a kid named Mike Brown that they shot in cold blood. Home of the, like, they call him the Democratic Socialist. Big politics. The he grabbed my boob movement, like Me Too. All sorts of sub-rate programs. Oh yeah, and we're the second most deadly city in the United States. I live here, and I talk like this. Isn't that great? Sure, I'm the holistic stylist. Okay. Oh wow. You got it once, and it was rough. Something was coming out of my skin. My skin didn't handle it well, but I got through it with Epsom salt. Nice. So, you know that Epsom salts are one of the best things for you. Now, if you want to jump it up a level, then you want magnesium. Of course, Epsom salts are magnesium. The difference is between the type. So one is stearate and one is chlorohydrate. I like Dr. Shealy's products because he has the top of the line magnesium. So if you called him and ordered, you would be able to make a gallon of magnesium oil for about 40 bucks. You would use 6 to 8 ounces in the tub, and that's the shit. And then they also have a lotion. And when I was when I was as close to death as I've been, I actually had magnesium IVs, and I hate needles. So for me to go into a fucking doctor and to be blessed with having the only one in St. Louis that would even do it. He was a DO from, well, he was Pakistani actually. And then he wound up like being interviewed in the 70s because he worked with autoimmune disorders. And he said I was the healthiest sick person he had ever seen. But I had magnesium IVs to lower my blood pressure because I was walking around with blood pressure 150 over 110. Why? Stress. And these projects, this MK Ultra, and all these arms, and being a targeted individual, and coming from a line of Highlanders called the Glasscocks that they killed off to get the Land Patent Act of 1643. Whatever. It's all coming out, and the quicker the better, because it will be involved. Because I'll tell you what, these son of a bitches, and it's going to come down to the Rockefellers, come over here in the 1700s, and they got a land patent. Well, where the fuck did they get theirs? If ours was stripped from us in 1643 at the same time, they were taking away the indigenous rights, getting them tanked up on whiskey, and that was all historically at the same time. So we get that land patent. Nobody can take your house when they cry martial law and say, we want your land. It allowed you to stick your family flag wherever you lived in your teepee or your tent or your trailer home or your big ass house or your castle. But hey, no problem. And that's why all the colleges are Jesuit owned and operated. It's land patent land. Now you're at the mud fossils with the buildings that were never really churches to begin with. They were Tesla power generated places. More and more and more and more and more. I mean, they flood some place out, and you got to realize that there was a fucking city built below your city. And then everybody wants to argue, is the earth flat or round? And what kind of a matrix it is? And, it's too much for people to take. So one of the things I always try to do with my information is to alleviate people's suffering. And it works most of the time. When it doesn't, I'm freaking people out and they're terrified of me. I mean, I think it's kind of stupid to be scared of me. I say, don't kill the messenger. I'm just the bitch with the books. I'm the girl with a plan. I don't know. And it's definitely a slow kill deal. The blood merges. Really, I love talking to you. You have a lot of information. I will check my blood tomorrow. I've always been curious. That would really make me happy. I mean, just because there's been people mock it and say that people with negative blood are all Illuminati killers. They want to say which race modified each of our DNAs by our blood type. I mean, they're saying such argumentative things. And the reason I really got into it was to help reduce my stress. It wasn't because I was going to tell you I'm an ET, which is an extraterrestrial. it's fascinating. And, you know, we're really spiritual beings having a human experience. It is what we are. And so, you know, you get into the whole thing with religion and politics and health and mental illness and the whole thing. And you think, wow, to manipulate the most key critical things in one's life. Hi, honey. My son's home, 10:47. Big day at school tomorrow. You know what I told him? You're an adult. I mean, I was staying up till midnight when I was a senior in high school. Why am I going to give my kid a hard way to go? Okay, now hang on. I don't mind showing that. Absolutely, I'll show that. All right. Diadamo. I was using Dr. Teal's. That would be, we're talking about Epsom salts. It's good. I mean, I'd rather you use Dr. Teal's than Walgreens brand. Kind of like don't get your castor oil from anybody that is going to sell you castor oil with hexane in it. You want hexane free. So it's always a matter of quality. Now, me, honestly, it never fucked with me, the truth. Because I had such a tough childhood that this to me is much easier than what it was back then. And I'm happy to know that there are people that you think are dead that are alive. And then I like it too that there's some really wicked people that even though they're alive, they know they're dead. And we know everything was inverted upside down and backwards. And what's happening on this globe and in this cosmos is something that has never happened before. So we don't want to let ignorance stand in the way of courage. And, you know, the old story, if you've ever seen the time travel movie, Just Visiting, they say, courage is our creed, you know? And I mean, what else is there? And then you get the song, Me and Bobby McGee, and they say, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. I don't think that that's what we were created for. Fuck that. We get to be free and bring in this new time where I believe that there will be no Antichrist. I believe the Antichrist has been here since pimpin's been pimpin'. And I've made the public statement that I believe that the master of chaos, the guy that trumps every deal, he's just an actor in the role of the Antichrist. We all have a role. And I didn't even know I was an actress because I tell the truth. So it's fascinating. God loves the courageous, I believe. That's true. Hexane. I believe it's a byproduct of the chemical industry. I want to think petroleum. And then you know what I gotta say, don't you, BBB? Who the hell is Maxim Shevchenko anyhow? Because Utako uranium connects to Clinton's, connects to Haiti, connects to trafficking. And this jackass that owns Utako Uranium and the new Vista Petroleum Company, each share's worth $99 million, and they call them penny stocks. And they stole those penny stocks from my grandparents and everybody else's. I got 23 shares of nothing. But if we found out who douchebag was, which they could be doing in tribunals and nobody would know, but Whoever's supposed to know. And then they shut down the pipeline because water's life. And we don't need to keep taking the lifeblood out of this earth. They've known it. Shit, they made gasoline out of water and liquor and every other damn thing. It's all about power and control. Which goes back to we lead unrequited lives because we've chose the fear of love over love itself. And now you're back to courage. All the world's a stage and we're merely players. And even though this is a matrix and it's a simulation, in higher realms, this is actually playing out in something that's not a matrix. So either we get to be on the stage with these puppet strings on us, or we could be in the dancing crew and like do pop and lock. And I've noticed aliens and demons there. That's my cat playing the piano, no shit. Do you hear all that? So the cat plays the piano when she wants to be fed or let outside. And I got jackasses teasing me like I'm cruel to my animals because I allow my cats to go outside without a leash on. That's the same kind of douchebag that wants to make a natural deodorant out of baking soda and then tell you you're stupid because you're not mixing it right and it's burning your pits. And like I said, just get Crystal Rock deodorant from the health food store. What the fuck? It's $7 and it'll last a year. Why you gotta build a controversy and fight a bunch of people over something that's irrelevant? Oh, because it takes time. It wastes time. And it sucks energy out of people. And now you're back to parasites and worms. Tag it. It is also related. I mean, how can you make this kind of shit up? Oh, right, you can't. Okay, so I guess these are your different types of things that I would just have to call a louse. Like a tick on crack. And then I'm sure that these are specific to geographical location. This is nasty. Now we're getting into pedicula. And a lot of people know those as crabs. You know, like you get on your box or on your junk if you're dancing with the wrong partner. Female. Ugh. Okay, so this is a female one after she got down with something. I don't know if it's food or skin or blood. She's swollen and you see her insides. We got the different head shapes. I mean, they couldn't have made this shit up, right? And what about fly larvae? And you know, then you got to think back to these plagues. All I can think of is Frankenstein's monster. Anatomy of the mosquito. Boy, I don't like mosquitoes. These days, you know, they've genetically manipulated them. And you got to wonder if somebody didn't look at all these drawings and think of it like when they breed fancy dogs. And you mix one thing together with another thing, and the next thing you know, you got a dog with a smashed nose and no tail. You don't even want to know how bad it is when they take a dump. She's playing also. That's right. I play to win, too. The Green Knight told me that when I did my first broadcast on that fucked up Conscious Consumer Network. And, you know, it really got to me then, too, because the kid in the story, he honors the Green Knight. He does what he wants him to do. The Green Knight sends him on a journey because he's never been with a woman yet, doesn't have facial hair, and never been drunk. He goes out in the world, fights monsters, bad guys, demons, every other damn thing. It's a 4-part riddle. The kid only gets 3 parts, and he thinks Sean's going to cut his head off. Sean Connery's the Green Knight. And in the end, he doesn't cut the kid's head off, and everybody lives happily ever after. But it's kind of like with what's going on right now. They can stop most people's hearts with trauma and fear. And that's the bottom line. I'm really glad you were here for this first live stream over here. Appreciate it. Skin infections. Right. Spinal fluid examination. So I would say that's confirmation of spirit on the subject of these invaders being everywhere in us. Oh, shit. The percentages of lymphocytes in the spinal fluid. It's kind of like everything. They did some really great studies and tests. And then they said the dog ate him. And they locked him in a vault. Or didn't let us see him for a while until we'd forget. Long enough to infect everybody. And by then, I believe it just keeps mutating, right? All right, that's enough of that book. Let's see what else I got to show you. This live stream's pushing 2 hours. Why can't I just come on and be simple and effective? You know, most people don't want to listen to me but for more than 10 minutes. So here again, BBB. Bless your heart. Okay, here's the last thing we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to blow dodge and see what these ornery teammates are doing online. I turned my head for 10 minutes. They got shit popping off. Okay, like I said, I'm a hairdresser. And these 2 books right here are how I learned so much about why an enzyme developer was a superior replacement for peroxide. But in the meantime, our answers are here and everything's tagged and ready to go for when we do get into class time. I mean, I really care about the subjects I'm into. But this, okay, one of them is a 6th grade reading level and one is a 9th grade reading level. They were going to destroy these books, and the library called me and said, hey, I mean, you know, I did her hair. You know, Suze, we got a couple enzyme books they're going to destroy. Do you want them? And I said, fuck yeah, and I went and got them. Lewis and Clark Library, where I grew up across the street. When they synthesized the first enzyme in the late 60s, they said that it was a wonder and an embarrassment. An embarrassment because they weren't able to understand the dynamics of an enzyme. They say it's the God gene. And they had to synthesize it. And they synthesized it and it kind of went rogue and fucked up. So I believe a lot of the new designer diseases and things they've done by manipulating enzymes. I will bring that into witness. And then when you research the homeopaths that have lost their lives, they were researching enzymes and viruses. So, welcome to your hairdresser's world. And I'm not even allowed to work in the town I live in because it's on a path of self-destruction and politics. And I can see why I'm dangerous. I can dress wounds. I can soothe souls. I can take care of anybody's needs. So when we all meet together with whatever's coming. And I get little bits and pieces of gossip. I'll be your first aid cheerleading hairdresser. They say there'll be edibles there too. So, confirmation of spirit phenomenon progress, BBB. Mr. Just. You're just. And you're BBB. Do you get it? All right. You're back. Man, I gotta go. 2 hours. And I can just feel it out there. Somebody's waiting to fuck with me. And, right. And what I'm going to do is get my iPhone back in the game. Every other live stream that you've been involved in, I was working through my iPhone, using my computer to do my multiple screens and all my dances and tricks. And I thought, grow up, Suze. Do what you need to do and try something new. So the next time I come back, I'll play around with the screen. I'll see if I can't get multiple shares up, or I'll just bring my iPhone and play it to you and hold it like this. Nothing's going to stop me. But this channel of mine, like I said, was supposed to be my real channel. And my dumbass didn't know. And this is connected to all my Google algorithms. So let's play ball. Because I promise you this, they will all be changed in a fucking New York minute. So with that, thanks for being here, BBB. If only one is here and it's true, I would rather have that than 100 people just poking the bear. So love you, and we'll talk soon. I'll be out there. I'll be up all night, baby. Take it easy.